Okay. I think everybody here knows that the League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization working to engage and empower citizens to be informed and active voters. We offer educational programs like this to educate the community and help them understand the issue. So this is a service to the community that we offer. Today, our presentation is on gun safety and domestic violence. And does everybody know that October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month? Everybody know that? Okay. So why is the League, which is a political organization, giving a presentation on this topic? It's because every vote counts about this issue and about electing candidates who support the views that you espouse. So this is really about voting, making your vote count. Our panel of speakers include law enforcement and women who represent organizations concerned with both gun safety and domestic violence. And this hybrid event is being recorded, and the video will be posted on our YouTube channel and is the property of the League of Women Voters of Sarasota County. So I will introduce our speaker. Carol Resigno is a graduate of University of Florida and a career newspaper editor, first of the Sarasota Herald Tribune, and then for more than 30 years at Newsday in New York. She was responsible for local, national, and international news. After Newsday, she taught at Stony Brook University for a few years before she and her husband retired to Sarasota in 2012. Carol became the second president of the Sarasota Grassroots chapter several years ago, working on laws and attempting to raise awareness about firearm safety. Carol?
I should say go Gators, I think, so it's more. My notes are not as ominous as they look, I just have to do bigger type. I think that's okay. I was asked to talk about legislation and programs and to explain what Brady does, so I think I'll start with the former. According to a 2018 study, 4.5 million women in the US reported being threatened with a gun by an intimate partner in their lifetime. The same survey found that nearly 1 million women had actually reported being shot or being shot at by an intimate partner. So it really is an issue, and probably most of us, whether we know it or not, know someone who has been involved in a domestic violence incident. So I'll start with the state. I learned a few days ago during a state roundtable that the legislative committees that have started meeting for the 2023-24 session are rather quiet so far, or they were last week. Perhaps because it's pretty clear where the votes in Tallahassee will go this year, certainly gun-wise. One good bill that was filed by Senator Lauren Book, she's a Democrat from Broward County, would set up a program for something called a HOPE card, which would be issued to those with orders of protection. And they would be wallet-sized cards that could be used for quick and reliable information about the person they have this order against. And they could be presented to law enforcement, to employers, to landlords, to schools. Another potentially good program was started last spring by Attorney General, Ashley Moody, to provide free doorbell cameras to survivors of domestic violence, human trafficking, stalking, and sexual violence. These cameras would help survivors feel a little more secure, perhaps, at their homes, and it would provide evidence for police if a potential abuser left the scene before they got there. So it was made available in 2 pilot counties, Hillsborough and Martin, and last week they expanded it to include Manatee and Hardin. So they're hoping it will expand. Both of those programs are good, but they don't solve the problem of access to guns before the shootings can occur. So they're still, they could be good and be Band-Aid programs at the same time. So the issue that we at Brady are watching the most closely right now, nationally, is a court case called US versus Rahimi. How many people have heard about it? A brief description of the case: Zaki Rahimi was dragging his girlfriend through a parking lot in Texas in 2019. And car passes by, he figured, oh my God, there's a witness. And he pulls out his gun and fires at the car. Fortunately, did not injure anybody. The girlfriend gets a protective order. Federal law prohibits people under such orders from owning guns. So onward to 2020 and 2021, and Zaki Rahimi goes on a shooting spree and fires the gun he's not supposed to have in the first place. Several more times in several different incidents. Again, fortunately, no one knows. I guess he's a bad shot. Eventually, he is charged and convicted of unlawful firearm possession in a federal court, district court. But wait, the Federal Appeals Court in New Orleans sided with Rahimi this past March, acknowledging that we know he's not a model citizen, but they ruled that our ancestors would never have accepted his case in the first place. What do our ancestors have to do to that? Well, I'm no lawyer, but I'm going to try to explain this case. It's about to go before the Supreme Court on the 7th of November, so it's great if you're aware of it to talk to other people. It is a Second Amendment challenge. It's a blockbuster case. In an opinion last year that it invalidated a New York gun licensing law, and a majority of the Supreme Court ruled that gun regulations must be consistent with this nation's historical tradition of firearm regulation to survive court challenges. That means firearms rules could stand only if the government can prove that they align with gun laws from very early in our country's history. Align is one of those words that could go any number of ways. Or as a reporter from the New Republic said, grab your muskets. Although federal law has prohibited gun possession by people convicted of misdemeanor domestic violence since 1996, that type of violence wasn't recognized as a crime before the 20th century. So all these things are being weighed. Rahimi, in essence, argues that because there was no regulation that banned guns from people subject to restraining orders at the time of the nation's founding, the federal law that prohibits that ownership today must fall. Now, the Biden administration appealed to the Supreme Court, which agreed last month that it would hear the case, and the court could issue a ruling on gun ownership that could prove especially thorny for the gun lobby. Makes them look like real bad guys. And for the court's conservative wing. It could have a catastrophic effect on victims of gun violence or any domestic violence. Or it could dial back a little bit the really bad gun violence. So I should let you know that Brady and Moms Demand and several other groups will be rallying outside the Supreme Court building in Washington on November 7th at 8:30 a.m. to show the justices that there are many of us who think they need to consider this case very, very carefully. So if you have people, know people in the DC area, or you're going to be up there, just show up. It's important to note also how rage can boil over into both domestic and mass violence shootings. A team at Johns Hopkins Center for Gun Violence Solutions analyzed 110 gun murders of 4 or more people, which is considered a mass shooting, between 2014 and 19, and found that in 68% of the incidents, the perpetrator killed an intimate partner or family member, either there or just before or just after. Think of Sandy Hook, mom was shot first, and so on. If that person's guns could have been removed, and there are ways to do that, beforehand, we might not have had a mass shooting. Researchers have found that past violence is the best predictor of future shootings. So many observers hope that justices will be reluctant to say that domestic abusers have a right under the Second Amendment to possess firearms, which seems so logical to so many of us, but not certainly all of us. So there's hope this case would lose. So remember that case, Rahimi. I should point out that back here in Florida, North Florida Republican Representative Joel Rudman has filed legislation to eliminate the 3-day mandatory waiting period to purchase a firearm. And that's a measure that was part of the gun control law that was passed after Parkland in 2018. So gun safety groups cite research that says if you buy a gun and walk out of the store with the gun, there's more chance you're gonna act on impulse. You're mad, you go, you get the gun, you leave, you shoot the gun. There's no cooling off period. And that goes for suicides too. People are despondent, they go, they buy the gun, bring it home. So those are the main programs and things that we're watching right now. What does Brady do? We are the oldest gun violence prevention movement, or one of them in the country, named after Jim Brady, who most of you will remember was shot and severely wounded during the attempt on President Reagan's life in 1981. And he and his wife Sarah worked tirelessly to get this Brady background check bill that we hear about all the time. Gun safety folks have been trying to strengthen it ever since, and the gun lobby has been trying to weaken it ever since. The bill requires a criminal background check and a wait of 3 to 5 days for someone to purchase a gun. And unfortunately, that doesn't include guns bought online or from a private seller or from the back of my car. I should point out that earlier this year, Florida dropped the mandatory waiting period for those who get a concealed carry permit. And I never quite was able to find out what the thinking was behind that, why I dropped that part of the permit. So working for gun safety is complex. So Brady works in 3 areas: in Congress, in the courts, in the communities. We have lawyers involved in most of the court cases that involve guns that come up, amicus briefs, so on. We have people in and out of congressional offices all the time, lobbying, trying to talk people into one thing or another, explaining programs. We have grassroots chapters like ours in Sarasota working to raise awareness. This chapter, Sarasota's chapter, was formed over a decade ago as an idea among members of St. Boniface Church on Siesta Key. And then it expanded outside the church, and we are the most active Brady group in Florida. We do a lot of awareness raising, speaking, tabling events, networking with officials who represent us at all levels on both sides of the aisle. We are also nonpartisan, but as we keep saying, this is a public health issue, should never have been politicized in the first place. We absolutely encourage our people to vote and to get everyone else to, because that's probably the bottom line in terms of what will work the best. And we do endorse candidates, mostly for state and national offices. Since the beginning, our Sarasota chapter has rallied every Thursday from 4 to 5 p.m. at the Bayfront in front of the O'Leary's End. We do it from October into April, and we hold up signs for passing cars, and we are generally well received. And I have a contact at the police department that I reach out to before we start up again, and we have a long conversation. Is there anything going on in the community? And we talked the other day, and he said, it's looking pretty good out there. So join us anytime you want. Come once, come every time. Good people out there. We also hold an annual vigil for victims of gun violence every December. And this year's will be on December 8th at 6 p.m. at First Congregational UCC on South Euclid Avenue. Our featured speaker will be Sarasota Erica Dorsey, who I met when you had your march, whose 12-year-old son, Aaron Hunter III, or Lil AA, has done a remarkable job of rehabbing after being shot in the head outside his home in June. And he hopes to join his mom that day, and we are hoping that he'll be moved to come. It should be a very special evening. So I'm just going to close real quick with a quote from our Brady president, our national president, Chris Brown. When you read about the devastating personal impact of gun violence, it can be hard to make hope in the face of such extraordinary. But for the victims of gun violence, the survivors, their families, and all of those who have been impacted by this terrible epidemic, we owe them our hope. I would add, we owe them our help. We owe it to them, we owe it to ourselves and our own families to keep fighting for no other reason than this. We have the right to live our lives free from the threat of gun violence. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Carol. Hey, Ginger McCallum moved to Florida in 2014 after growing up in Michigan and spending her career years in Maryland. A volunteer with the Minnesota local group of Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America since 2018, Ginger is currently the local group lead. In addition to Moms Demand, Ginger chairs the government action team of the Manatee County of League of Women Voters and volunteers as a patient escort for Planned Parenthood of Southwest and Central Florida. She and her husband reside in Bradenton. Okay.
Good afternoon. Okay, so I am Ginger McCallum. I am the local lead for the Minnesota group of Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. And we have around 300 to 400 supporters, not active volunteers, but supporters, volunteers in the Manatee and Sarasota area, thousands in Florida, and 10 million nationally. You probably know that Moms Demand was started by Shannon Watts after the Newtown tragedy, and it grew from just one mom on Facebook to the 10 million that we have. Could do the next slide. So we are moms and dads, aunts and uncles, teachers, caregivers, grandparents, gun owners, and others. We are a grassroots movement, and we're all fighting for public safety measures to protect our communities from gun violence. Principally, we are very involved in legislation, both at the state, even now at the local level at times, particularly in Manatee County, state level and federally on looking at legislation and trying to pass safer gun legislation. We work in our communities with other organizations like Condos that you'll hear about to encourage a culture of responsible gun ownership. We know that gun violence is preventable. We do not have to live this way, and we refuse to accept it. Next slide. When I started this work about, well, I'll say when I became interested in this work after Newtown, and I was support financially, the statistic was 90 people per day in the United States are shot and killed by a gun. When I became actively involved after Parkland in 2018, the number was 110, and today it's 120 every day. 60% of those are suicides. They're not the mass events that we read about. And so, you know, the rest are everyday gun occurrences that typically happen in home. Next slide, please. So you've already heard the facts from Carol about gun violence against women, domestic violence in the US. We are the most dangerous country in the developed world for women. With proliferation of guns in our society. And our focus at Moms Demand, creating this with other organizations, is on our lawmakers and on legislation. And we really are pushing always for stronger legislation that would prevent folks with getting access to those guns and or getting them taken away when they've proven to be abusers. And as with Brady and others, we're looking at Rahimi very, very cautiously, directly, you know, with great interest, because it really could open the floodgates for more deaths. So we do have extreme risk protection laws in Florida. They're very helpful, as it says here. Well, in Florida, only law enforcement can enact an extreme risk protection order. A family would have to go to the police and ask for that, but the responsibility resides with law enforcement in Florida. It has been used almost 6,000 times, according to the statistic I found just this morning, since enactment in 2018 after Parkland. And another story I found just this morning by News 4 Jax out of Jacksonville said that in the 8 months around April, there were almost 2,500 risk protection orders filed, and 80% of those were enacted. So this is really, really important legislation that Moms Demand and other gun violence prevention organizations support, because it gets those guns out of the hands of people who are a risk to themselves and others. And we really would like to see an expansion of those laws. Next. Something else that Moms Demand and our parent organization, Every Town for Gun Safety, is involved in is working with community violence prevention organizations. And starting in 2021, they have had funding available for these organizations. There was $20,000 per organization available in grants this year. And they can really be used by the organizations in any way possible. So it's something, an expansion of the work that we do beyond the legislation, beyond trying to elect responsible legislators, is to provide some funding to these community organizations who are on the ground working every day to stop this violence. And more on the ground than Moms Demand is kind of an outsider in many of these situations can be. So another related issue, so not domestic violence per se, but another issue that we have in the United States is that nearly 700 children, 17 and under, die by suicide with a gun annually. What's the number? 5.4 million children live in a household with an unsecured gun in the United States. And Carol, what's the statistic on 150 a day? 100. Anyway, the number of children who unintentionally shoot themselves or somebody else is astronomical. I should have on the slide, I apologize. And 90% of these unintentional shootings that children access are guns that are improperly secured in the home. So to put into context, with the women who are living with domestic violence, we have a lot of children in the United States who have access to those firearms. Next, please. So the Moms Demand Action has its own program, its own trademark program called Be Smart. And the focus of the program is adults to keep those guns safely secured and away from children. I'm going to put a domestic violence protection for women spin on this, because I think there are aspects of it that really do apply. SMART is an acronym. We'll go through it all. But the first one is to, next slide please, is to secure the guns in your homes and in your vehicles. And I would say, so first of all, you need to keep them unloaded and locked separately, because kiddos are curious. They're going to get to them, they're going to find them, they know where they are. And if you use your phone code to unlock your gun safe, your kids know how to get in your guns. They can climb up a cabinet. And I would say the same is true with domestic violence. In a moment of anger, if that gun is sitting on top of the cabinet, if it's in your bedside table or a desk drawer, you can grab it and use it without thinking. And so you have that moment, 10 seconds even, to have to unsecure and load that weapon. It can be the difference. And so we advocate for those firearms to be securely stored. And the next two slides have pictures of different kinds of gun locks. They can be as simple as a cable that goes through the, I'm not a gun owner, but it goes through the handle, and it goes up through the firing mechanism, all the way up to a biometric safe, where you can put your thumbprint or your palm print on it to open it up. Dials, there's, you can do the next slide. So lots of different options, lots of different price points. Some are safer than others. Okay. The next in the acronym is M for model responsible behavior. We always want people to talk about and model the responsible behavior of keeping those guns away from people who don't have them. So if someone is drinking, we ask them to put can we take your gun? Can we put it somewhere safe? We never joke about guns with kids. You might remember the Michigan case in Oxford where after the child made threatening comments before shooting up his high school, his mom made a joke to him about, well, don't get caught. So it's just, we always want to be responsible in our conversations and our words and our discussions about guns. The A is asked about unsecured guns in others' homes. And I think this can relate to domestic violence as well. If you're not, you can ask about whether there are firearms present, but you can also ask if someone needs help. Maybe you've witnessed somebody who appears to be a bit violent or in a bad way to you. You could ask the partner, are you afraid? Can we do something about that? So this refers, the Ask and our Be Smart program refers to asking about firearms in the homes that your children are going to play at, or maybe their caregiver's house, even grandparents. So it's important. You would ask if they have peanut butter. You would ask if the gate on the pool is secure. You would ask if the parent's going to be home. Let's ask about a firearm in the home. And people are afraid to do that. When we talk about Be Smart, if you want me to come talk to you about that, we'll go into a lot of detail about that, but people don't want to ask. They're afraid of the conflict. But again, you can also ask if you are afraid somebody's in a bad situation, a domestic violence situation, if they are afraid, if they feel unsafe in their own home, and help them find the right way, the way to get to safety in that moment. And then the R is recognize the role of guns in suicide. I think I mentioned earlier that 60% of gun violence, of that 120 statistic, is suicide. Overall adults and children. Children are at a higher and higher risk every day in our communities. And here in the Southwest Florida area, we have a lot of veterans. Gun owners, higher risk than almost any other community of gun violence, suicide, and that could spread to the rest of their lives. So, and finally, we say to tell everybody about being smart, about being safe. And I would say again, we can relate that to domestic violence situations and talk about it and not keep it a secret, not shove it under the covers. Okay, Brady has a similar program. They call it End Family Fire. We're all focused on many of the same things, and work in our community. We work closely together on our different messaging, on our different programs that really come together. And again, it's these violence in the home, preventable injuries, unintentional deaths and injuries are preventable. It really comes down to better legislation and knowledge about how to keep your firearms safe. So our legislative focus for 2024 with Mom's Demand, which is coming right up, and Sarasota's legislative delegation meeting is Thursday morning, is coming right up, and we have a number of things. So we'll be, on Thursday morning, we'll be speaking against HB 17, which Carol mentioned, which is the law to repeal the 3-day waiting period on all gun sales. And it would reopen potentially this Charleston move that allows people to buy guns even if background check is complete. So most background checks in Florida happen pretty quickly, and you get that firearm that you purchased within that 3 days. Every once in a while, it takes a little bit longer. And usually if it's taking a little bit longer, there's a reason. And so we don't want that loophole closed where somebody who potentially shouldn't have that gun gets it anyway because it's taking a little bit longer. As I mentioned, we're for improving secure gun storage laws. We do have one on the books here in Florida. It is pitiful. I have it if anybody wants to see it afterwards, but it's a misdemeanor if you violate the statute, and pretty much in Florida, what happens if a child, say for example, or a domestic abuser gains access to that gun and they harm somebody or kill somebody that is close to them, it's said that they've suffered enough. They don't need a gun charge also because they've suffered enough. So we don't see a lot of action on our secure storage laws for unfortunately. And then we're also for funding at the state and national level of community-based violence intervention programs. The Florida legislature approved $5 million for that this year, 2023. DeSantis vetoed it. And he also turned down the $15 million available in Florida through the Safer Communities Act that was passed last year. So it's turning us back on money that's available to help us fight gun violence in our communities. Well, I also wanted to mention something else that Carol mentioned in the New York Supreme Court case, where a couple of the justices had relied on ancestors for laws that were in effect with the historical precedent when the country was founded. Moms Demand Action has started a work group. It started out in the West, but they have a work group. And if you enjoy history and if you enjoy research, you can do digging in old case files. And they are looking for case files that contradict these statements that the Supreme Court justices have made, saying there was no laws on the books, or they never, took guns away from people who were unsafe or, who were convicted of certain crimes. And they're finding case law. And that's just one of the difficulties when you're up in front of the Supreme Court and they say that, you don't have all that at your fingertips, and it's tedious work. But if you enjoy that, there is a work group. And on another slide, I'll show you how you can access that. So if you are interested in getting more involved with Moms Demand or getting our texts or emails, you can text READY to 64433. That's our brand new Florida state logo. You can also, next slide, join our Facebook group. And then we have some regular events that happen. You can find that work group I just mentioned at momsdemandaction.org/events. We have a national orientation webinar every month. We have a statewide Zoom every month on the first Monday at 8 p.m. All of Mom's meetings tend to be at 8:30 p.m. because a lot of our members are moms, right? They're working full time, they have kiddos at home. You have to, have the kids fed and bed before they can do a meeting. So, and then we have local meetups in person, approximately monthly. Our next one is November, I think it's 7th, it's a Sunday, and we'll be up at a brew pub in Parish. So, but all of that is on our events page, and you can find it by putting in your zip code. And that is what I'll leave it with today.
Thank you, Ginger. Rhonda Callahan from Benton Harbor, Michigan is a people person and master hairstylist at Rhonda's Hair Salon and Boutique. 5 years ago, she founded Queens of Domestic Violence Awareness after she was brutally attacked by her ex-fiance in her own home. The Queens Group is a grassroots organization serving the community, and Rhonda will share more about what they do.
Good evening, everyone. So my name is Rhonda Callahan. I am the founder of Queens of Domestic Violence Awareness Incorporated, where our mission is to spread awareness to our community and then to the world, and informing women do not have to stay in domestic violence relationships or whatever their meals about. So I founded this organization because I'm a survivor of domestic violence. I was in a relationship with a guy, and he was brutally abusive to me. And that was something that I was not going to stand for. And when I tried to break it off with him, he attacked me and stabbed me 30 times. When I got better, I went to Spark and I took a victims advocate course, and I trained to be a victims advocate. I volunteered with Spark for 5 years on the hospital sexual assault team. And during that time, I started my own organization. And now today, I have 23 members on my team. And what we do is we get 24 hour calls from victims and we meet up with them. And right now, we're able to put them in a hotel for up to 3 nights. I know that's not much, but in an emergency situation, it helps, and it can save a life at that time. So our goal is to raise enough funds to get a safe house so that they will be able to stay in at least 2 years, so that they don't have to go back to the abuser. Most times when they, after the 3 days, they do end up going back, or they end up homeless out on the street. So that's something that we are trying to prevent from happening. So we do like 2 to 3 events throughout the year, and that's how we raise funds. We raise funds to be able to pay for those hotel stays, Pampers, milk, whatever it is that they need at that time. And I just wanna thank you all for having me here. I don't have too much to talk about the other ladies. And thanks to law enforcement that day, they were able to get him off the streets. Something that we do teach the women in our group that come to us, we teach them about how to apply for injunctions, background checks. That's something that I wish that I had done that day. Had I not, I probably would have went through the things that I went through. I found out that he had been beating women for the last 22 years. And the women would not speak up for themselves. They would either ask the judge to drop the charges, or either they would show up for court. And the judge had to drop the charges. So when it came time for me to go to court that day, my attorney asked me, did she want me to speak for me? I said, no, I'm gonna do it. And I did just that. And when I got done, the judge had tears in her eyes, and she apologized to me for what I had went through. So we try to encourage women to speak up for yourself. Don't be embarrassed. We just started our first round of support group, and it's a 12-week program. And we just encourage those women to uplift your self-esteem and don't allow anybody to disrespect you and call you out your names. Because that's what he used to do to me. He used to call me the B word all the time, and I hated that word. And I was not gonna allow him to stay in my house and call me out of my name and think that it was gonna be okay. So that's another reason why our organization is called Queens, because he had called me B so much, and I was like, no, I'm not that. I am a queen. So we just encourage women to love yourself and respect yourself, and don't allow anybody to disrespect you. And like I said, I'm thankful to law enforcement because they was able to get him off the streets. And he should have been locked up years ago. But I thank God that he has 30 years in prison. And I know that don't seem like very long, but I thank God that he's there where he deserves to be. And our organization, we just had one of our biggest events Saturday night. It was a Black Tie fundraiser gala, and we sold out. We had a very good turnout. And so with those funds, we're gonna sit down with, I had a couple people that we talked to about a house, so hopefully that'll go through, and we'll be able to help other victims so that they don't have to stay in that situation, and then they can be safe. Well, they deserve to be safe to live in this world. And I have some pamphlets that we want to learn more about our organization. Thank you.
Yes. So, Erica Dorsey, do you feel comfortable sharing your story?
I can.
Okay, this is Erica Dorsey, who is the mom of a gun violence victim.
Hello. Hi. So my son was shot on June 22nd, which that day it was just weird because we were all together prior to that. And then a kid came to my house and said, hey, AA's been shot. And I was like, no way, like he's not shot. But But then true enough, I get over there to the scene and yes, my son is shot. Took a gunshot wound to the head. When we got to the hospital, they were telling us that it was going to be a 6 to 9 month recovery for him, or almost to a year. But actually, my son is sitting right there. So, I just wanna say, you know, I'm glad, like you stated, ask questions, because my biggest thing is when my kids ask, can they go to someone's house, I'm always saying, is a parent going to be there? That's always my question, but I never thought to ask, do they have weapons? You know, or if there are pools and stuff around, I never thought to ask that, so I do appreciate that part of it, because now, but he won't be going there. It's almost like he glued to my hip. But just the thing about how easily and accessible these guns are, it's completely ridiculous. And actually, there was an incident recently at the bus stop where my son used to ride the bus at, because he no longer rides the bus. I take him to and from school. And there was a kid out there, his older brother came to the bus stop to confront another kid with a gun because they had a confrontation. But then, you know, the teenager said, oh, well, I apologize, I'm sorry, but it's like, it's not that, like, that is not the way to resolve things. I don't know why they feel like going to grab guns is going to fix anything, because it doesn't, it only makes the situation worse. But overall, that's why I don't mind, I come and I'll speak on behalf of anything when it comes to this gun stuff, because thank God that my son did live. Things could have went completely differently for him, but it didn't, and I'm just grateful for that, so I thank you all for having me. That's it.
Here. Sergeant Robert Morrison is with the Community Action Team of the Sarasota Police Department. His associates are here, Nick and Molly, and I assume you're also with the Community Action Team? Awesome, okay. He's involved with Operation Armistice, an anti-gun violence initiative.
Hello, I just want to first say, start off with, I'm really proud of everybody in this room, because it does take a community to make it safe, and we need these partnerships in the community to reach out and do what you're doing, because everything helps on that regard. So I do have a PowerPoint. It looks like it's having a hard time loading, so I'll try to talk over it. All right. So I'm with the Community Action Team. I'm the sergeant there. We are assigned to the Criminal Investigations Division of our police department. We're tasked, I have myself and 5 officers. We're a proactive unit. We're tasked with quality of life measures within the city. We use intelligent-led policing to identify hot areas of new crime trends, and then we are tasked with coming up with solutions to those problems. So it could be problems of such as downtown noise is a big, or traffic is a big issue for them. It could be burglaries, it could be robberies, or it could be gun crimes. So next slide. So again, we have the 5 members. Our intelligent-led operations, every week we have meetings with our intelligent detectives, members of the Criminal Investigation Division who might have open investigations that are looking for people. Also outside agencies are invited to this as well. I've had the Sarasota Sheriff's Office there at our meetings to talk about the crime trends that they're seeing. And our analysts, crime analysts are also there. So getting fed on a weekly basis of what is happening outside the city. Because it's one thing for us officers, we have a hunch or we kind of have a feel for this city, but we want to go on actual evidence of what is actually happening that we can prove that is happening in the city. So why we started Operation Armistice on April 13th, 2023, and it ran for 4 months to on August 31st of 2023. It was our anti-gun crime initiative. So next slide there. Why did we choose Operation Armistice? And you're gonna see some points here, if you can just click on those. We've seen an uptick in violent crimes. This is associated with guns. We ended our last operation that we had for this specific incidents of gun crime December of 2022. So I say we ended it, doesn't mean that we stopped enforcing those gun laws, or but it's just focused. Our focus went on to other things at this time. So we had an uptick in burglaries. So we kind of went from the gun violence to burglaries, but we're always watching. And so what ended up happening is in a couple of months of releasing our focus from the gun crimes, we've seen some upticks. So 1 month we had 4, 1 month we had 6. And so that's after the second one with some young victims that we decided that we will again kick off with another anti-gun violence. So we're using all the intelligent policing. You're gonna see some of these graphs, the next slide here. This is how we kind of track with our intel detectives. They do a really good job of importing all of our crimes into our system, and then it generates these reports for us. So it gives us, it's called a dashboard, but all of guys have access to this where we can look and see what the crimes are doing. So you can see, this is from October 2022. It goes down in November to 2 cases, up in December. We stopped it in November, it goes up a little bit, then it shoots up for January, goes back down, then shoots up again for March. And once we seen that uptick in March, we decided let's go out and identify some of these crimes that are happening associated with guns. So the next slide, please. That's shots fired, and then we use this mapping tool to show us exactly where in the city that this might be occurring. So again, you're gonna see a majority of it being on the north districts, but we did have one on the south end there at Siesta Key. That was in regards to a New Year's Eve shooting celebration that happened out on the beach. And then there was on the west end of our districts, I mean east end of our districts as well, and that was drug related. So next slide, please. So the goals of the operation was to enforce our laws as it deterrent to the violent crime. It was a multifaceted approach to provide a safer environment for the residents and visitors. When you're dealing with gun crimes as well as in domestic violence, you're dealing with some of the highest recidivism rates amongst all criminals. So you're going to see that and that's a study that's done by the U.S. Supreme Court's sentencing guideline or sentencing commission. They found that it was some of the highest rates. So it's not enough just to put these guys or girls in jail for these violent offenses. We've got to make sure that we're doing it on good cases and sometimes we have meetings with the state attorneys to ensure these are followed through so that they understand the importance that what doesn't happen. So a multifaceted approach we also did is we would see next slide here. We wanted to try to combat this every which way we could. So you might recognize some guy on this photo here. He's in the back of the room. Well, we did a done with a gun event, and partnered with also you could get a gun lock giveaway. So we not only gave we would take in any unwanted guns, but we'd also no questions asked, or we'd give you a gun lock if you wanted to keep your gun, you just didn't have a proper way to store it. Again, we see this a lot that happens in our cities is that either a gun is no longer needed, wanted, and it just sits in somebody's car and they forget about it. And then it ends up getting a victim of a burglary or a stolen vehicle and they find that gun ends up getting used in a crime in the city. So we'd like to get those guns off the streets as safest way possible. And so if you don't want them, please bring them in. In total, on one day, in 4 hours, we got 30 guns, 30 firearms. There was one stolen firearm. It was reported out of a it was a 1970s case in New Jersey. So that was turned into us. A short barreled shotgun was also, which is illegal to have, was turned into us. 2 starter pistols and a ton of ammunition. Again, we'll take it any way we get it. No questions asked. This isn't, we're not running background checks. We're just getting those off the street because we understand if somebody doesn't want them, they're generally going to fall in the wrong hands. So we don't want people wrong. Okay. So next slide. Another approach we took is we partnered with our law enforcement partners in the Florida Department of Corrections, both their adult and juvenile sections. On this picture here, we did an operation where we did curfew checks and home visits with the Department of Corrections adults. And these were specifically targeted because they had prior gun arrests and convictions. So we knew that these people had already committed a crime with a gun. And we just wanted to make sure that they weren't in violation, either not being at home when they're supposed to be at home or having another weapon in their home. So they would, this isn't announced to anybody, we just do it, and it's a spot check. In that operation, we did find one adult who was in violation. He had some marijuana on him and he was growing marijuana, where he believed that he was in the right because he had a medical marijuana card, but that wasn't the case. So that was the only violation of that one. But we also did one with the juveniles as well. We did juvenile checks one arrest was made there where the juvenile wasn't at home when he was supposed to be home. So we're trying every way we can. So next slide. I bring up this one, that this is our street interdictions. So again, going off the best intel we can, given to us at that given moment. My guys are hard at work, doing everything they can, pouring through every case report they can find, fresh from our jurisdiction or other jurisdictions. So we had a BOLO, which is a be on the lookout for, a vehicle, and this is taken, all the photos should have prepped it, is photos from our operation. So what you're seeing here is my officers attempting to stop a vehicle as it flees from us. This vehicle was wanted for a homicide that had happened in Bradenton. So it was a recent homicide. I think it occurred on a Sunday. We had spotted it on a Wednesday, I believe, when we came in. It took off from us. This met our policy guidelines for a pursuit, so we authorized the pursuit. We used a helicopter, and that's the photograph you're seeing there. The helicopter allows us to pursue a vehicle safe for, I should say, the most safe way, or the best safe way that we can. It is a very dangerous thing to do, but it allows us to get a little bit more, we can be further away from the vehicle, to lower their speeds, lower our speeds, but we still have a good visual on it. So the helicopter was in the air, so it took over the pursuit for us. It went for about 4 miles before a small traffic crash, and the occupant was then arrested. He's facing what we recovered from the vehicle was 1 firearm, 2.5 grams of fentanyl, and it's about 6.7 grams of xylazine. If you don't know about xylazine, xylazine is what is now being used to cut our drugs, and it is a horse tranquilizer, or they call it trank, and it causes sores that are uncurable, either on the skin or in the organs of some of our drug users. So it's very important that we get that drug off the streets as well. Anyway, the male is facing now a list of charges, and you're seeing those there: aggravated fleeing to elude, hit, run, resisting an officer, and possession of fentanyl and xylazine, and the possession of a firearm and the commission of a felony. So again, very dangerous. This person obviously has already been in one crime and was willing to commit other crimes to get away. So it's very important that we get this person under arrest and recover that firearm that was used. All right, next slide. So it's a little hard for you guys to see this on this thing, but I'm just gonna kind of read them to you. We had a 99 arrests in the 4 months. We seized 20 firearms from the streets. When they're done with a gun event, we got 30 firearms, so it was a total of 50 firearms seized during this 4-month period, or roughly 4-month period. We had about 5.5 pounds of narcotics, not just marijuana, but all narcotics. And you can see there, we gave a majority of our drivers got warnings, but if you met the requirements for a traffic infraction, you got a ticket for that. Of note, if it was minor infractions of marijuana, we do have a civil citation that we do issue here for under 20 grams of marijuana. If you don't have your medical marijuana license, you only have personal use, they do allow us the authority now to issue a civil citation to those people. Right, next slide. So this is statistics on the people that we arrested. Again, going back to the recidivism rate of our gun criminals, you can see that they have this kind of points it out to you. Again, we arrested 99 people, but of those 99 people, they had a history of felony arrests. Felony arrests were 1,150. History of felony convictions, 321. History of misdemeanor arrests, 790. History of misdemeanor convictions, 366. So what you're seeing there is that this isn't the first time being arrested. And this isn't, even if it works, they are arrested, it's very hard for us to get conviction on most of these cases. So we really, really need the help of the community to kind of stand up with us and say, we're not going to let this slide. Now, when you pick up a gun and they use it in the commission of a crime, we're not going to settle for a plea deal. We're not going to settle for them to take in a misdemeanor conviction on that arrest. So, okay, next slide. So again, this is kind of hard to read on this one. It's a little bright. But what we did see, the results of this is a 100% decrease in the homicides from this year to last year. So up to this day, that's still good for this year. We have had 0. So up to this point, last year we had 5. So order to 0, and then we have a 15% decrease in the amount of shots fired with evidence. So 15% doesn't sound like a lot, but I guarantee if you're in that neighborhood or if that's outside your front door, you would definitely take the 15%. That'd be 15 less times that somebody shot in front of your residence. So we also made 3 homicide-related arrests outside of our jurisdiction, and we made 1 home invasion robbery arrest. On the domestic violence issue, we will say that we have had that here recently in our city with that home invasion was domestic in nature, as well as one of our shootings was domestic in nature as well. And because, as they can attest, it goes very, very dangerous very quickly when those two are mixed, when guns and domestic violence are mixed. Okay, so next slide. This is everybody that we partner with. Again, I'd add all you guys in our list as well, everybody in this room, because again, it takes everybody. Any questions? Next slide. This is my phone number. I'll have my card up there too. If you take my card, if you have any further suggestions.
I have a question. So that one picture there was taken from the helicopter, and apparently then the helicopter took over the chase and, did the arrest and all that. Well, I don't know, but my question has to do about using drones instead of helicopters, and does the police department have any of those?
Yes, good question. Yeah, that The helicopter followed it for us, just to make reference, it followed it for us, but we made the actual physical arrest. Once the traffic crash happened, our guys were close enough that we could go in there and arrest the person as it fled, but the helicopter just gives us that vantage point to give us some more of a perimeter, that we can set a wider perimeter. Yeah, so for drones, exact same thing, it is a force multiplier for us, it sees things that we can't see. We are kind of constrained on that, of when we can use it and when we can't use them. Because we don't want to violate anybody's constitutional rights or Fourth Amendment rights of seizures, because if as a law enforcement officer, I put something within a drone, it allows me to see things maybe I don't have the legal right to see. So we have to be very careful about that. But we do and have used them. We use them, I'm on the SWAT team as well, and we went to that home invasion robbery there, and we used them quite a lot to see into the structure. We have little drones that I have no idea how to use, but some of these other kids do know how to use them. So they were able to fly and put them right into the house without, putting a human into the house, right, or a dog or anything else. So we do, and so right now, I know we have at least, I want to say 5 SWAT drones, and how many other drones? 3 or 4 other patrol drones that we use. But again, it's used for searching for missing people on the beaches or evidence collection and stuff.
What happens to the guns that you collect?
So most of them are held for evidence, and if we seize them for a criminal trial, and then as soon as that criminal trial is over, if the person is convicted of that crime, then they are destroyed. We don't auction them off, we don't give them away. Same with the gun stuff. Once they're given to us, we don't give them back, we don't auction them off or anything like that. They take them to, I think it's a place in Fort Myers where they pretty much melt them down. So.
From a law enforcement point of view, do background checks help?
Yes, it does. Background checks are the first gap stop for us. There are ways around those, as we've heard. And with the new CCW law, there's going to be a lot less of those background checks, because now people are going to be able to carry those without having a CCW license, where a CCW license was kind of that stopgap too. They did a background check to make sure that you were legal to carry. Now, without that, you're not going to have that background check. Pretty much, it's on your word that you haven't done those until we stop you, or we have a reason to stop you, and then we find out, well, no, you were convicted of a felony and we're in violation of the CCW. So it most definitely does help, as long as they're done properly. Yeah.
As a follow-up, does law enforcement have lobbyists? I mean,
Yeah.
and have they lobbied to keep background checks?
I'm not sure about, I don't know about the lobbying about background checks as it appears for the new CCW law. I don't know if we had somebody on board with that. I think we definitely do have lobbyists. Our unions have lobbyists up there at all times. But this, it does, we are not immune to the gun violence, right? We are victims. I have myself been a victim of aggravated assault with a firearm towards myself. So on the job. So it does behoove us to have strong gun laws against those type of things. So your question I can't answer, because I don't know if we do or not, but I think it's important. I think it definitely is important to any which way we can keep the criminals that are not supposed to have guns without guns.
If I could just add on the concealed carry, when the legislator was ready to file the bill, he had a number of people behind him on the dais, and many of them were not city police departments, certainly not this one, but there, it was county sheriff's offices, including Sarasota's and possibly Manatee's. So the lobbyists would be different from organization to organization also, because we talk quite often about police being the first ones who might get shot in a situation. So we're always kind of surprised to see law enforcement that would feel the opposite way.
I can't really speak to that, but yeah, I understand what you're saying, yeah.
There is a question in the chat. How does the new gun law benefit the citizens in terms of safety?
So I guess, the new gun law, I think, is something that's called the constitutional carry. So, it would say that if everybody abides by it, there would be more legal guns out there in legal gun owners' hands, able to respond if we need them to respond to an active shooter or a robbery or, an abuse or domestic violence situations, then where we weren't able to get there in time.
I have a question related to domestic violence, if I may.
Sure.
If someone is in that situation, or I'm a neighbor, say, and I observe, or I suspect, what should I do? In terms of the police department, what's my best option?
So you always can make an anonymous complaint if you're worried about your safety. We'll take any, we'll take it by phone calls, emails, texts. I think we even have somebody who monitors our social media, so if there's something that goes out that way, if you want to just respond to our Facebook post or whatever, hey, I know somebody about domestic violence, they'll do it that way. And we also have these kiosks now all throughout the city. If you can't or don't feel comfortable doing it at home or making that phone call or don't have access to a phone, you can report it there. So we'll take it any which way you can, but I think you just have to say something because again, that person who's in that may not or cannot report it for themselves. So yeah.
Can I make this announcement here?
Of course,
about
go
this?
ahead.
There is a film that's called This Is Where I Learned Not to Sleep. And it is a documentary. It's a part quest for justice, part journey towards healing. Decorated Nashville cop Mark Wynn wrestles with his own violent childhood while working to reform decades of domestic violence, mishandling, cover-ups, and abuse from deep within law enforcement. It's available until the end of the month, streaming wise. It's $10. It's about 38 minutes long. And you can watch it as a group as well. And I know I showed it with Ginger and she thought maybe that would be good for the group to watch. I found out about this because my daughter works at the Violence Against Women department in the office in the Justice Department in Washington, D.C. And so this is like hot off the presses. Not anybody knows about it except this group right here and my daughter. But I'll leave this out here so you can get the website if you're interested.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
I'm wondering, from the officer, has domestic violence increased since COVID or during COVID in Sarasota County?
I'm sorry, yeah, you asked about the COVID and it did have a reaction to the domestic violence. I don't have the numbers to back this up. I would have to get that from my crime analyst. But I can say that whenever stress is induced to the human behavior and you're asked to spend a lot of time indoors with said people that are stressed out, violence or disagreements, just arguments happen. And so as being a first responder who was working during COVID, yes, we did see a lot personally, my feeling is that there was more of that. But again, I'd have to get my crime analysts to actually have the numbers in front of us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sergeant Morrison, and let's show our appreciation for all of our speakers. Thank you for joining us, and remember, your vote is your voice and it matters. Thank you for coming.